Dr Nozuko Mkabayi is a senior manager at the Department of Health in South Africa. She has over 28 years of experience as a medical doctor. She specialises in pediatrics and child health. We met at Howard College, the University of Natal in Durban. Now it is called the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We lived in the same odd campus residence, which was called John Bews, and this smile is telling something. And shared a common friend, Nesta Dlamini, who introduced us. Unfortunately, we lost our friend to colon cancer during her 4th year in medical school. Nozuko has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and is a fierce medical health advocate. This is the main reason why I wanted to have this conversation with her on this episode of Wisdom Personified, Conversations with Dudu Msomi. Thank you so much for making the time. It's been forever.
I know.
I mean, really.
I know.
How many years?
20?
Oh my God. Okay, let's move on. Let's get into it. But thank you very much for making the time.
It's a pleasure.
So we met when we were students, so I don't really know about your younger days. So can you tell me a bit about your upbringing? Where were you born? Do you have siblings? What were your treasured pastimes as a child?
I was born in Umtata in the Eastern Cape to Mr. and Mrs. Mkabayi. They're both now late. So I'm the last born. There's 2 of us, me and my brother. My brother is 2 years older than me. I think I had a good upbringing. When I look at relatively, really, we were not wealthy, but I had professional parents. My mother was a teacher, and then she was a nurse, and then she was an administrator later on in her life. My father was a bookkeeper at a law firm. So relatively, we were fine.
Just middle class?
Yes, we were middle class. Although when you grow up, you don't think like that. You always think you don't have. Yeah, so it was just me and my brother, and I think I really had a good upbringing. I went to a good school, and then...
Just St. John's, wasn't it?
St. John's College in Umtata.
I remember something.
A lot of professionals. One of the best schools, still is one of the best schools up to date. Mm. And then at the age of 16, I went to Durban, to Natal Medical School, which is where we met.
That's where we met, yeah. What did you do for your pastimes? Like when you were playing as a child, what was that? Did you play?
I played a lot.
Oh.
I've always been an extrovert. I've never been that child that sits at home and reads books.
Uh-huh.
I was always out and about and playing with the neighbors, children. My father used to love taking us out. So we'd go to Port St. John's, which was about 40 kilometers away to the seaside. My father also played sports. He was a soccer player when we were younger. So we used to go and watch him play. He used to take us to watch boxing. So we were quite an active family. They also did ballroom dancing.
Okay.
The 2 of them. So
cute.
In fact, they were champions of their time.
Oh.
So I guess that's where I took my dancing skills from both my parents, because I used to love dancing as well. And
well, I know the party part of dancing.
Yeah. So I was quite a party animal. Yeah.
What do you think wisdom means as opposed to intelligence? Because intelligence, we know that you're intelligent, but wisdom?
I think wisdom is how effectively do you apply your knowledge. And unlike just pure intelligence, which is mainly your IQ and how you are able to assimilate knowledge, wisdom is how do you then apply that knowledge.
Yeah.
And with wisdom comes your emotional, your EQ.
Yeah.
It comes your SQ. How your EQ is your emotional quotient. How do you, what type of person are you? Are you a person that keeps their word? Do you have integrity? If you say you're going to do something, do you do that? Do you keep your word and all that? That's your emotional quotient. Your SQ is your social quotient. How do you relate to other people? Are you able to keep relationships, especially over time? And also, now that's wisdom.
Yeah.
and also what they call AQ, which is your adversity quotient. And that is how do you spring back from adverse things that happen to you. So really that comes with experience, and it comes with, I think, you have to be a bit older to say you are wise. You have to have had some experience in life to say, really, you're wise. I can't say I was wise when I was at school. I was.
But some people can observe and say, "Hey, you kind of like there are people that are all souls."
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. You can be an old soul, but generally, it comes with experience.
Yeah, the perspective is important. Yeah. So what do you think your unique value proposition is? If you were not here tomorrow, what will we miss about you?
I think it's saying it as it is. And being always honest. Sometimes it's got me into trouble. I'm one person that I always say, I don't have a filter. Sometimes it's good, but sometimes it's not.
Were you always like that?
I was always
it's because at school there was really nothing to be controversial about in our space.
Yes, although I think at medical school, because medical school is very...
It was kind of a separate environment.
And also it's very controlled, and you have to behave in a certain way. You can't say certain things. But I've always been that child that actually, even growing up before I went to university, I know my father sometimes would want to hit me because I'd say it like it is. If he came back not so sober, I would give it to him, and tell him how I think it's inappropriate. So I think for me, that's the main thing. I really am honest who I am and true to who I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in 1997, you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder after you actually self-diagnosed yourself. Yeah. But anyway, when we were students at Howard College campus, which was University of Natal, Durban, now called KwaZulu-Natal, did you suspect anything?
No, absolutely not. Although, I think 10 years later, actually 2007 years, I had a psychiatrist in East London. I'd moved to East London by then. After my husband passed away, we were living in Joburg, and then he passed away, and then I moved back to be closer to home. And in one of my sessions with my psychiatrist, Dr. Woods, he was like, "Do you realize that you actually had this condition at medical school?"
Really?
Yes. But when I was at medical school, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Because I was relaying to him about an incident where my then boyfriend, who later became my husband, we had an argument in the middle of the night. So, on those ticket boxes, so those phones at residence address. And I can't even remember what the argument was about. And then I had a motorbike, small little motorbike scooter. And I got onto my scooter at 1 o'clock
in the morning,
1 a.m. And I rode to his house, which was about 30 kilometers away in Claremont.
Yes. From Howard College?
From Howard College, from John Bews. And I went there and went and woke his father up. And I wanted to talk to this young man at the time. And he was like, "That's not normal."
No.
Yeah. So I guess he felt that as a teenager, I was starting to show, some signs of it. But I diagnosed myself at the age of 25 when I was already married and working.
So what is bipolar disorder? I mean, we're talking about it, but what is it?
Bipolar disorder is a form of mental illness. It's one of the serious forms of mental illness in the sense that it's chronic. So which means that you can treat it, but you can't cure it. So you can't get rid of it altogether. Unlike maybe depression, anxiety, which after some treatment and after some interventions, you can actually recover from it fully and you don't need medication anymore. So it's a mood disorder. It's a type of mood disorder. Like depression is also a mood disorder. So bipolar disorder, bi is two.
Yeah.
So poles, it's two poles, one end and one end. So on one side of the spectrum, you are very high, the other side you are too low. So sometimes I can be very high, which is called the manic episode. Sometimes it can be very low, which is the major depression part. So it presents either as major depression or as mania. And some of the symptoms when you are manic is you can spend a lot of money, you can be over-talkative, argumentative, you can be very irritable. Sometimes you can even be a bit psychotic, like you lose it altogether when you are not controlled. And the major depression when you are depressed is very severe. The depression is very, very low. And
does something trigger it?
It can be triggered by something that occurs, but sometimes there's no trigger really. It just occurs. And a lot of the patients, 80% of the time, it's actually hereditary. So most of the people, they get it from their parent.
Was yours hereditary?
It was. Although growing up, we did not know that my father had bipolar. But it was only around 2005, I think, when I was seeing one of my psychiatrists, when he mentioned that I was going to put me on one type of treatment. And then I realized, because by the time my father passed away, I was in 4th year medical school. And when I went through his medicine cabinet, he was taking one of the medicines that I used to treat epilepsy. And he was never epileptic. So I asked my mom, why would my father be taking this medication? And she didn't know. All we knew was that he had hypertension. So, and then when the psychiatrist mentioned that he was going to put me on epilim, because it's actually used as a mood stabilizer in bipolar, although it's for epilepsy, then the penny dropped. That he actually was diagnosed, but he hid it from us, because I guess because of the stigma, we didn't know. And it's very unfortunate because he actually self-medicated with alcohol. That was my dad. And this is what a lot of people do because of the stigma of mental illness. They self-medicate with substances. And we focus so much on the substance
and not the cause.
And not the cause. We don't actually even realize that there is an underlying cause. And that's what happened to my dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a painful journey.
Yeah.
So you kind of started mentioning, but what do you think one of the biggest misconceptions about mental health in general is that perpetuates a stigma that prevents people from seeking help?
There's a lot of stigma around mental health. When you have mental health issues, firstly, people think that you are not good enough, that you may not be able, if you are employed, you may not be able to carry on your duties if you have a mental illness, that you may not be able to live a full life, you may not be able to have children, you may not be able to do anything, most things that other people can do. And, they think that you are crazy 100% of the time. You've got a loose screw. And there's a lot of belief as well that even with bipolar, people think that people with bipolar are violent. I've never been violent in my entire life of having the illness. That you can just snap and be violent and, attack people. So there's a lot of stigma. Yeah. And also that of course, I've said bipolar can be hereditary, but not all the conditions are hereditary, that you're going to pass it on to your offspring. So there's a lot of stigma socially. There's a lot of stigma in the workplace. There's a lot of stigma in the workplace, especially in the professions that we're at. They believe that if you're in a certain profession, then you should not be having, should not be talking about mental illness. You should be completely okay. And then growing up as well, when I was younger rather, there was a lot of, in the African community, a lot of people thought that people that were mentally ill were actually bewitched.
Yes.
They associated with witchcraft. And it still happens up to this day. That when someone is diagnosed with a mental condition, they're taken to sangomas, they're taken for exorcism and all sorts of things. So there's quite a lot of education that still needs to happen, especially in the Black community.
Which brings me perfectly to this question now. You are a very prominent mental health advocate. You're also quite prominent on social media. Are you concerned about the impact this has on your children and work relationships?
Yes, at some point I was concerned about it. I started advocating publicly because I also, for the longest time, I was what is called self-stigma. I had self-stigma because I did not want people to know. I felt embarrassed about the diagnosis. I didn't want people to know that I was living with this illness. So I never spoke about it at all. I didn't speak about it even to my mother.
So you don't even have anybody to share?
I had nobody to share this with. And it's funny enough, you would think that because I'm a medical doctor, my colleagues and my friends, and I still have, most of my classmates we're still friends, good friends.
I know.
From medical school. So I've kept most of my friendships. And it's something I'm very proud about, honestly, because I've had moments where I've really seriously dropped the ball, and you would think that my friends would have, dropped me, but, they've really been there, and I appreciate that about them. So I was saying that you'd think that being a medical doctor and being in the medical field, it would be easy to sit at dinner or at lunch and we talk. But I found that when I started talking about myself and my challenges, the room would just go quiet.
Because they didn't know how to receive it.
Even now, they don't.
But Nozuko,
they don't know.
Deviating, do you remember how you were at varsity? You were like the model, beautiful. I mean, you get what I'm saying? The stereotype of beauty. I mean, your fashion sense. So the minute you disclose that, it's almost like something is wrong with you, but to you, such a perfect model of everything.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, that's another thing about mental illness, actually, to do. You were saying about the stigma around mental illness, because people think that mental illness has got a certain face.
Yeah.
You can be a medical doctor. You can be beautiful. You're well put together. Yeah. You've got a beautiful family. You've got a beautiful this. You can't because
it's like, what's your problem?
Yes,
that's the thing.
Yes, what's wrong with you? You should be happy. You should be appreciative. It's like you're not appreciating of what we have, and yet it's an illness like any other. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. Actually,
yeah,
that's how I can simplify it. It's something that you're born with, that you cannot control. It might not be evident, like it was not so evident when I was growing up younger, but later on in life it became more evident. But anyway, we're talking about the
impact on work relationships.
The impact on my children and on work. So, and then I decided when I remember I joined Facebook around 2010. And around 2012 is when I started talking about my journey with bipolar disorder, because I really had nowhere to talk. I had no one to talk to. And I started writing about my journey. And I started getting positive feedback from people. A lot of people would, contact me on the side, because I don't think there was Messenger back then. Those people that have my phone number would phone me and say, I've got a relative, or I myself am going through this. And the more feedback I got, the more I realized that I actually needed to talk.
Yeah.
And also it was so good for me to actually talk, to be open about it. And when my children became teenagers, I remember my firstborn actually spoke to me about it and said, Mom, some of the things you write about are quite hurtful. Do you mind not writing so much about it? And I sat down with them. Actually, I spoke about it with my therapist.
Yeah.
And she said, no, talk to them. If they don't want maybe to befriend you, don't also be offended if they want to unfriend you. But I think it's important that they understand that this is your journey. And the more you talk about it, the more you're not just helping yourself, but you're helping other people. But maybe just be sensitive about those issues that affect them. And then I realized that I just needed to be a bit sensitive about the things that affect them. And then I remember there was a time about 2-3 years ago when I just stopped writing completely. I just went off social media. And my son was actually the first one to say, Mom, why have you stopped?
Wow.
And I'm like, no, boy, I just feel I need a break. She said, no, Mom, you can't do that, because you are assisting so many people. And even when I read about your posts, I'm actually also understanding some of the things that I didn't understand that had me when I was younger. and we never actually got to talk about it.
So now I'm able to process.
Now I'm able to process it and understand it. And Dudu, honestly, me being out there and talking about my struggles it actually did something that I never thought it would do. The amount of messages and the amount of people I have assisted, most of them strangers, that go onto my inbox, and I'm able to assist them, and I'm able to direct them to the right kind of care. It's invaluable. With work, it's been very difficult because being in the profession that I'm in, we're supposed to look like we've got it all put together. We're supposed to look like, everything is going well in our lives. You can't be having problems, because then patients are not going to be having faith in you. So I've had challenges, but I've said in every single job that I've actually spoken about my advocacy at the interview, at the job interview.
This is who I am.
This is who I am. This is what I do. And if you take me in this position, you must know that this is what I'm going to do. And there are so many people in the workplace that are going through stuff.
Yeah, suffering in silence.
They are suffering in silence.
Which is why we're having this conversation. I mean, I kind of said, because even at board level, we get these reports about, what's happening with the employee assistance programs. And you really can start seeing the trends that people are not really being open.
Yes. And even their carers, their psychiatrists and their psychologists, when they write their sick notes, they don't really come out and actually say, because of the stigma, and it goes back to the stigma. So at the end of the day, I think it's important that those few of us, because there's very few of us who actually come out and talk openly. Some people talk, but it's very superficial. Yeah. There's very few people that actually come out and talk openly about the struggles that they go through. Yeah. So I think it's very important that those few of us that do, they do that even in their places of work. And even when it comes to EAP programs, if you've got mental health advocates in the workplace, use them. Yeah. Use those people, because the other employees are able to actually open up to those people that have opened up. So I've assisted a lot of people even in all the various workplaces that I've been through.
So there's so much work you're doing in private that people are not aware of, because the minute you advocating, they know that I have an ally. I can...
Absolutely. And they're saying that if she can be open about it, so, what's stopping me? Yeah.
Totally get it.
But it hasn't been easy to do. I'm making it look sound like it's easy.
No.
It has not been
I know the pain you've gone through.
At all.
Yeah. Which is why after all this time, I decided, because remember the coffees are just not happening. We've been trying for a while. So I just thought this is so important that I need to be also part of the channel that you use to get the message out there.
Yes. And I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
What wisdom have you learned about humanity that has been illuminated through how they react and treat you when they're aware of your bipolar disorder?
I've learned that people are very fickle, Dudu. And I don't even think it's just about mental illness. A lot of people, and I know I'm generalizing here, they don't want to know you when you're going through stuff. If you lose your job, if something bad happens to you, you are in the press for whatever, you phone people, they don't pick up your phone, you send messages, you get blue ticked. So it's the same with me. I've lost a lot of people along the way since I started advocating. And so I've learned that a lot of people want to associate with you when you are doing well and when things are going okay for you. But as soon as you look like you have a problem, they don't really want
it's catching.
Yes, absolutely. They don't really want to associate with you. And I realized that those few that have actually stuck with me, those are the real people. Yeah. And I'm fine with that.
Adversity has a way of revealing our life path, but also the angels and ambassadors that are around us. I always say that.
Absolutely.
Because if things are going right, you will really never know who truly is in your corner.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, this is a tough one for me to Good luck this conversation, but it's worthwhile, I must say. What is your response to people that say that mental health is being used to reframe human frailties, or is a sign of weakness, or it is used to whitewash bad behavior?
Yeah, there is a lot of that, especially in the workplace, Dudu. I think it's because people don't really understand about mental health issues. And I think the more we talk about, the more we have these conversations, the more people come out, especially people that other people look up to. You know, we've had a lot of celebrities coming out and talking about their mental health issues. And they've had a lot of backlash. But I think the more people come out and talk about their struggles, and the more people understand that if you've had a depressive episode, for instance, or you've had anxiety that necessitated you to leave work and be off work maybe for whatever period of time, and maybe when you come back, you're not as effective as you were, and you need to maybe gain some strength, and you need to, take some time to actually get back and be yourself again. And these are the conversations we need to have.
Yeah.
So if you don't talk about mental health issues, we're never going to get for people to actually understand what they are. I'm not saying there are no people that actually use their illness, but I think there's very few people, because I don't think that someone who doesn't really have a real diagnosis would come out and say they're mentally not okay.
Because it's got a stigma. So why would you?
Why would you actually say that you've got a problem when you don't have a problem? And I think we also need to understand, back to what I was talking about earlier on, that a lot of people, especially young people, when they're going through depression, anxiety, they tend to use alcohol as a coping mechanism. They tend to use drugs, illicit drugs, as a coping mechanism. Now cannabis has been legalized. There's a lot of cannabis use in our young people. And we tend to focus on that. And we tend to say, no, these children are just, being silly. They just want to get away with bad behavior without actually understanding that they're going through stuff. So I don't think that there's anybody really who would actually be saying they're mentally ill when they're not ill.
Yeah.
So when there's some bad behavior going on, we need to support that person. We need to make sure that, is this person getting the right treatment? Is this person going to their therapy sessions? Because really, if you are mentally ill, you should actually be okay. You should be managed. If you are managed, you should be normal. So if there's things that are not okay, bad behavior, then it means that person is not properly managed. We should support that person.
In itself, it's an indication.
It's an indication that there's something missing in their management. So it shouldn't be that that person just let you just say, no, anyway, there shouldn't be that. Then if there's still some behavior that's odd, then you need to encourage that person to go back to their health.
As you're saying it now, I'm thinking of how Trevor Noah reacted to Kanye's behavior and said, to keep on inviting him on platforms when you know that this is a cry for help. Because the very behavior is showing that something is wrong.
Yes.
And yet we, trying to laugh at it and stuff like that. But anyway, what is the most courageous decision you've taken in your life thus far, and what drove you to that decision?
I think it's actually coming out and being open about living with bipolar disorder. Because there's so much stigma. There's a lot of stigma around mental health issues, just plain depression and anxiety. But with bipolar disorder, it's humongous.
It's literally a psychology chapter that you think about, but you don't really think you can actually meet somebody.
In fact, the amount, it's just on social media, dude. Yeah. Almost every day when somebody does anything off, somebody will say, oh, that is so bipolar. Bipolar people do that. She needs to be checked in. She's bipolar. She needs to be done this. Bipolar. People don't even understand
what it is.
What actually bipolar disorder is. So for me, I think just coming out and no matter what has happened to me, because I've had a lot of things that have come back to me. I've lost relationships serious relationships that, for me, and I'm talking about family, I'm talking about in-laws, I'm talking about people that matter to me.
Yeah.
And I've lost jobs, even. I've lost...
the price has been high.
The price has been very high. But I wouldn't change it still. I really would not change it. Because now I think if I had not come out, I'd be suffering.
Yeah, in silence.
In silence.
Yeah.
And I would not have assisted the people that I've assisted, yes. So I think for me that has been the biggest thing.
The blessings are just intertwined with the difficulties. Yes. So what keeps you awake at night?
What keeps me awake at night is my children. As you know, I'm a widow. I lost my husband when I was still very young.
How did that impact your mental illness?
It impacted it a lot. My husband actually,
that guy.
Yes.
Beautiful soul.
He was a beautiful soul. And I think he ended up becoming, I don't want to say my carer because I was not really ill. But he wanted me so much to be fine and not to be bothered about, I was not even allowed to buy bread in my house. I was not allowed to go to the shops and do grocery shopping.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that if you have a car, every year you must renew your license.
To care of everything.
Until I was stopped by a traffic cop and I started crying. I'm like, my husband used to do this. He used to pay for my annual health professions council fees.
Wow.
He did everything, He would run the bath for me. He would take out. He would want to know the night before what I'm wearing and make sure that it's ironed.
But he was like that even when you were a student.
No, he was.
He used to treat you like a queen.
No, he
that
did.
Man.
He used to bake me bread, banana bread, and bring for my friends as well. He used to bring alcohol for my friends that drank alcohol. So his passing was very difficult. And he passed away when my children were very small. In fact, before he passed on, he was very ill with cancer. And he was diagnosed when my little one was only 1 year old and the big one was 3. And when he passed on, they were 5 and 3. 5 and 3, yeah. So it was very difficult. And it did have an impact on my mental health. It still does. People I've since formed a widows group. I've got a widows group. After COVID, a lot of young widows lost a lot of young wives lost their husbands. They're now widows. So we've got this WhatsApp group, and the other day we were just laughing about how they all thought that after a year or two, people would be having new husbands and they'd have moved on and all that. And I was saying to them, even 18 years later, sometimes I still cry. Just 2 days ago, I went to a meeting in Carltonville, and as I was going out, there was a song that was blaring from the speakers and from this around the municipal offices in town, and it was his favorite song. And I sat in that car.
Which song?
It was R. Kelly's song. What was that song? I think he used to play that song every day.
Yeah,
it's about "You Saved Me."
Ah, yes, I know the one you told.
You saved me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh.
You gave me a second chance. You saved me. And that song came out when he was seriously ill. And when he became in remission, and he believed that he was really healed. And he used to play that song every single day in his car. Even the children, as young as they were, they knew that song. They used to sing to that song together. So this song started playing, and then I sat in the car and I started crying.
Yeah.
I just sat there until the song ended, and I'm like, as I'm driving away, I'm like, Nozuko, it's 18 years later. So, yeah. So it really did affect me a lot. It affected my children a lot. But we're fine. We God has been amazing. I'm a big believer. He was a big believer. He was more of a believer than I was. So when he passed on, I really had nothing to hold on to. And I really think that we've done okay.
It's always 1 second at a time. I always say with loss of anybody.
But like you're saying, it never really goes away.
It never goes away. So what legacy are you striving to leave in the world?
I'd like people to remember me for the one that never gave up. That I rose every time I fell. And I think that has been me, really. Everything that's been thrown at me, it's been hard. It's been very hard sometimes. There was a time when even materially I lost everything because of this diagnosis and the stigma at work. But every time I've fallen, I've actually picked myself up and I've become even stronger.
Yeah.
So I'd like people to remember me for my resilience. I think I've become
the phoenix from the ashes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What still needs to be accomplished from your bucket list? Can you just share one?
I'd like to travel alone without the children, because the few travels that we've had, it's always been the children. And I've just realized that actually I have not really had a life outside my children. So I think I'd like to have that life without the children, when the children are grown and they are settled.
Yeah.
And I can now say it's me and me.
It's your time.
It's my time. I really would like to travel the world.
It will happen.
And also the other thing I'd like to do in terms of my career is to open a healing center, a place of refuge for people that have especially mental health problems, where they can, let's say they go to the hospital and they're not fit to go back home or to go back to their environments. They can just come and know that there's a place where they can come to and recover.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
like a halfway house.
Like a halfway house, but in a very tranquil environment, or in, that I'm wishing that one day I'd be able to do that.
It will happen too.
Yes.
So in closing, what wisdom would you like to leave us with?
Everything that is thrown at you. And I never used to believe this. I used to think it was a cliche. When my husband died, I remember people used to say, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle and all those things. And when you've just lost a husband, you don't really want to hear these things.
Yeah.
But now, 18 years later, and after everything that I've been through, I'd like to say that whatever you're given, you must know that you've got the strength to take it. And it's not really for you. It's for other people. So whatever adversity that you're going through, whatever it may be, just know that once you've recovered, you'll actually be able to help other people with that. So whoever is going through anything, it may not be mental health issues. It may be lost. People have lost jobs, with COVID, there have been so many losses. I'd like to say to people, please, as long as you don't give up, you realize actually that it actually does make you a better person, as long as you just don't give up.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
At the time and the wisdom, it's really, really something that I really think it's time we hear it.
Thank you, Dudu. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
To end this insightful conversation, I would like to borrow a quote from Matt Haig, who said, mental health problems don't define who you are. They are something you experience. You walk in the rain and feel the rain, but most importantly, you are not the rain. I hope this conversation has inspired reflection and understanding, but most importantly, compassion. Until next time. Thank you for making time for this episode of Wisdom Personified Conversations with Dudu Msomi. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Click on the bell notification to be informed when our next episode is available. Wisdom Personified Conversations with Dudu Msomi is also now available on Facebook Watch, Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. Enjoy the wisdom journey.